The restaurant sparkled with soft lights and quiet music. It was beautiful, full of people dressed in their best. At a corner table, a couple sat together, Caleb and Ella. It was their 5th wedding anniversary. Ella looked happy. Her eyes shone with hope as she reached into her purse and pulled out a small wrapped box and a folded letter. She smiled, handing them to Caleb. "Happy anniversary," she said softly. Caleb didn't smile, but he barely looked at the gift. His face was tight, his eyes distant. He took the letter and opened it, reading the first few lines. Then he laughed, not kindly, cruelly. "This is pathetic," he said loudly, holding the letter up like it was a joke. "You really think we're still in love?" People at nearby tables turned to look. Ella's cheeks turned red, but she stayed silent. "You've brought nothing into this marriage," he continued, his voice sharp and cold. "No money, no success, just this sad little letter." Ella's hands trembled as she reached for the gift, as if to take it back. Caleb pushed it away with a sneer. "You think this makes up for anything?" he said. Then he stood up, threw his napkin on the table, and walked away without another word. Ella sat there, alone in the middle of the fancy restaurant. Her eyes were full, but she didn't let the tears fall. She kept them in, forcing herself to stay strong as people whispered around her. Inside her mind, her voice spoke quietly. "If only he knew what I'd given up to love him." Ella had always been quiet and kind. She grew up in a world full of luxury, private schools, fancy cars, and a last name that opened doors. Her family owned one of the biggest companies in the country. She was the only daughter and the next in line to take over the business. But Ella didn't want people to love her because of her money. She wanted something real, something simple. So when she moved to the city on her own, she changed her last name and lived a normal life. No one knew who she really was. That's when she met Caleb. Caleb came from a very different world. He was smart, charming, and full of ambition. He worked hard to climb the corporate ladder and always talked about wanting more in life. When he met Ella, she was working a regular job and living in a small apartment. Caleb liked that she was humble and supportive. At first, their love felt exciting and new. Ella fell hard for him. She thought she had found someone who loved her for who she really was. In the beginning, Caleb was sweet. He brought her flowers, cooked dinner, and told her she was special. But there were small signs, even then, that something wasn't right. He often made jokes about women who lived off rich families. He talked about how weak they were, how they never knew struggle. Ella never corrected him. She kept her secret, hoping he'd never find out. She wanted to prove she wasn't like those women he looked down on. After they got married, things slowly began to change. Caleb wanted to focus on his career, so Ella quit her job to support him. She cooked, cleaned, and stayed home while he worked long hours. He told her she was lucky she didn't have to work, but soon he began to resent her for it. "You don't contribute," he would say. "You just stay home while I do everything." Ella tried to remind him that it was his idea, but Caleb didn't listen. He started making her feel small. He criticized her more often. He made decisions without asking. When she disagreed, he said she was ungrateful. He told her she didn't understand how the real world worked. Ella's world became smaller and smaller. She stopped seeing her friends. She missed birthdays and holidays with her family. She told herself she was being a good wife. She just had to be patient. Things would get better, but they didn't. Only her older brother, who knew her secret, ever told her the truth. He visited once, took one look at her and said, "You're shrinking for him, Ella. You used to take up space." She didn't answer. She just smiled sadly. Now, 5 years into the marriage, Ella feels like a shadow of herself. She looks in the mirror and barely recognizes the woman she's become. Her eyes look tired. Her voice is quieter. She questions everything, her choices, her love, her worth. She wonders if Caleb ever really loved her, or just the version of her that needed him. The morning after the anniversary dinner, Ella woke up feeling empty. Her pillow was still damp from the tears she had cried in silence the night before. Caleb hadn't come home. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, her heart heavy. Her phone rang. It was her brother. "Ella." His voice was quiet, shaky. "It's Dad. He's gone." She froze. For a moment, she didn't breathe. The world seemed to stop. Her father, her strong, brilliant father, was dead. The man who had raised her, guided her, protected her, was gone. A wave of pain rushed through her chest. "I'm coming," she whispered, her voice breaking. Later that day, she sat in her father's office with her brother. The lawyer handed her a folder. Inside were documents that changed everything. "It's all yours now," the lawyer said gently. "The company, the estate, everything. Your father wanted you to lead." Ella couldn't believe it. She had known this day would come someday, but not like this. Not when she was so lost inside. Now, she was officially the owner and CEO of her family's business empire. She was no longer just hiding behind a simple life. She was the heiress. The power, the wealth, the name. It was all in her hands. Her brother looked at her seriously. "You need to leave Caleb. He doesn't deserve you. He never did." Ella said nothing. Her mind was spinning. Part of her still wanted to believe there was something good left in Caleb. Maybe if he knew the truth, if he knew who she really was, he'd change. Maybe he would finally see her worth. That night back at their apartment, Caleb finally came home. He acted as if nothing had happened. No apology, no guilt. Just a tired sigh and a few empty words. Ella didn't say anything about her father. She didn't mention the company. She didn't tell him who she really was. She just watched him. Later, while getting ready for bed, she heard Caleb talking in the other room. His voice was low, but clear. He was on the phone. "She's dead weight," he said with a laugh. "I've carried her long enough. Once I get that VP title, I'm done. I'll find someone who actually brings something to the table. Someone who matters." Ella stood frozen behind the wall. Dead weight. Her hands shook. Her chest felt like it was splitting open. That was how he saw her. After everything, after the love, the sacrifices, the years, she backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound. She climbed into bed and faced the wall, her eyes wide open in the dark. Her heart felt like it had been ripped out, but she didn't cry. Not this time. Now she knew the truth. He never loved her. Not really. He only loved what she gave him, her time, her support, her silence. And even that wasn't enough. She had given up her name, her power, her place in the world, just to be with him. And he saw her as nothing. But she wouldn't break. Not now. She wouldn't confront him. Not yet. He didn't deserve her pain. She would make him see who she really was, but on her terms. She would let him think he was still in control. She would let him talk about his big dreams. And then she would show him just how wrong he was. She would rise, and he would fall. After hearing Caleb's cruel phone call, something inside Ella changed. She no longer felt sad or helpless. Instead, she felt cold, clear, and calm. She decided to stop trying to fix their broken marriage. From that moment, she started pulling away from him, not in loud or obvious ways, but quietly. Emotionally, she began to disappear. She still smiled at him, still made coffee in the morning, still listened when he spoke about work. But inside, she was gone. Her heart was no longer in the home they shared. She stopped caring what he thought, what he wanted, what he said. While Caleb thought everything was going back to normal, Ella was making new plans. She called the board members of her father's company and stepped into her new role. She started using her real name again, Ella Whitmore. Her return to the corporate world was powerful and quiet. She dressed sharp, spoke with confidence, and quickly gained the respect of the senior team. She didn't tell Caleb anything. At home, he began to notice the change. She didn't ask him how his meetings went. She didn't laugh at his jokes. She no longer waited for him to come home. Something was different, and he felt it. He tried to take control again. He asked her where she went every day. She simply said, "Meetings." When he pushed, she gave short answers. One evening, Caleb sat down next to her on the couch and said, "You know, if your brother's rich, maybe you should ask him for some money. I've been thinking about starting something new. A startup. We could really use the help." Ella didn't even blink. "You should ask him yourself," she said, not looking up from her book. His eyes narrowed. "He doesn't like me," she shrugged. "That's your problem, not mine." At work, Ella's confidence grew. She led meetings, gave bold ideas, and brought in new business. Her father's trusted team admired her. They said she reminded them of him. Slowly, she was becoming the woman she was always meant to be. But at home, things were getting tense. Caleb started going through her things. One afternoon, he found her bank statements. He saw large amounts of money being moved, far more than what a normal job would bring. When she came home, he was waiting. "What the hell is this?" he said, waving the papers in her face. "Where is this money coming from?" She looked at him with no fear in her eyes. "You'll find out soon enough who I am." That answer shook him. It wasn't just what she said, but how she said it. Cold, strong, different. Caleb felt the power slipping from his hands. Later that night, as he sat alone in the dark, he thought back to his childhood. He remembered his mother crying because his father left. He remembered going to school with worn-out shoes, while other kids had everything. He remembered how girls from rich families looked at him like he was nothing. He had promised himself he'd never feel powerless again. That's why he worked so hard. That's why he wanted success, money, control. But now, the woman he thought he controlled was rising, and he didn't know how to stop her. He began to panic. He started buying her gifts, flowers, perfume, a necklace. He took her to dinner, tried to hold her hand, made sweet speeches, but it was too late. Ella saw through all of it. She thanked him, smiled politely, and went back to her world. The house grew quiet and tense. They barely spoke, and when they did, it was cold and sharp. Caleb's anger started to bubble. He asked more questions. He accused her of hiding something. He even asked if she was cheating. Ella looked him straight in the eyes. "If you really knew me," she said softly, "you'd know I don't have to cheat to feel powerful." The silence between them was heavy. A storm was coming, and they both could feel it. Ella stayed calm. She didn't rush. She let him grow more paranoid, more desperate. She was waiting for the right moment to reveal everything, and that moment was getting closer. A few weeks later, a big event was announced, a fancy company gala to welcome the new CEO of Whitmore Enterprises. It was going to be held at one of the city's most expensive hotels. Important people from all over the business world would be there. The news was everywhere, but Caleb had no idea what it really meant. At home, he saw Ella getting ready more often, coming home later, dressing differently. He was confused, nervous. He felt like she was slipping away. When he heard about the gala, he saw it as a chance to get close to her again. "Can I come with you?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Ella looked at him. Her face showed no emotion. "If you want." That night they arrived together. Caleb wore his best suit. Ella looked stunning in a sleek black gown. She walked with quiet power. People turned to look at her. Caleb followed closely behind, feeling unsure. The ballroom was filled with wealthy, important people. The lights were bright, the music soft, and the air was buzzing with energy. Caleb noticed how people greeted Ella with respect. Some even called her Miss Whitmore. He was confused but said nothing. Then came the moment. A senior board member stepped onto the stage. He spoke into the microphone with pride. "Tonight, we welcome a new era. Please give a warm welcome to our new CEO and official heir of the Whitmore legacy, Ella Whitmore." Gasps filled the room. People turned in shock. Caleb stood frozen. He looked at Ella as she calmly walked up to the stage. She didn't look at him once. She took the microphone and smiled softly. "I've spent years hiding who I really am," she began. "I thought love meant shrinking myself. I thought silence meant peace. But I was wrong." Her voice was clear and steady. "Loyalty should not mean losing your worth. Love should not feel like erasure. I gave up everything to be loved for who I was, and I lost myself in the process." The room was silent. Every eye was on her. "But not anymore," she said. "Today, I return not just as CEO, but as myself, fully." People clapped. Some even stood. Caleb stayed in his seat, shocked and pale. After the speech, he ran after her. "Ella," he called out, "why didn't you tell me?" She looked at him, calm and distant. "You never wanted to know the real me." "Come on," he said, voice shaking. "I didn't mean all the things I said." "You meant every word," she said. "You just didn't think I'd hear them." He reached for her arm. She stepped away. Then she turned and walked off, leaving him behind. In the days that followed, the story spread everywhere. Pictures of the gala were on news sites. People praised Ella's leadership and her bold return. Journalists called her the quiet storm. Caleb wasn't praised. In fact, rumours started spreading about his behaviour, his cruel treatment of his wife, and his embarrassing downfall. Soon after, his company let him go. They didn't want the bad attention. He called Ella. She didn't answer. One morning, he got a letter from her lawyer. It was divorce papers. No note, no goodbye, just action. He sat alone in his apartment, staring at the paper. For the first time, he truly saw the truth. Ella had never been weak. She had just been quiet, and he had mistaken her silence for smallness. Now she was rising, and he was left behind. Ella's life changed completely after the gala, not just on the outside, but deep within. The moment she spoke her truth in front of the world, something inside her healed. For the first time in years, she felt free to be who she really was. She didn't celebrate loudly. She didn't throw a party or post anything on social media. Instead, she got to work, quietly, powerfully, and with purpose. Ella spent long days at her office, shaping the future of her father's company. She made changes that mattered. She didn't just focus on profits. She wanted the company to stand for something real: kindness, strength, fairness. She created programs to help women who had gone through emotional abuse, just like she had. She funded shelters, offered job training, and gave women a second chance at life. She understood what it felt like to lose yourself in silence, and she wanted to help others find their voice again. People in the company admired her. She wasn't loud or harsh. She led with calm confidence. She listened more than she spoke, and when she did speak, people listened. Outside of work, Ella slowly started reconnecting with people she had lost. Friends she hadn't seen in years reached out after the news of the gala. Some cried when they saw her again. "I missed you," one friend said, hugging her tight. "Where did you go?" Ella sonrió suavemente. "I was hiding, but I'm back now." She spent more time with her brother too. They shared dinners, old memories, and laughter that felt warm and real. One evening, while sitting on the balcony of their father's house, her brother looked at her with pride. "Dad would have been proud of you," he said. "You're finally whole." Tears filled her eyes, but they were happy tears. She nodded, her heart full. For so long, she had lived in fear and doubt. Now she was standing tall, in her name, her power, and her truth. Meanwhile, far away from that world of light, Caleb sat alone in a small apartment. The place was quiet and cold. Boxes sat unopened, dishes piled up in the sink. The only light in the room came from the TV. He watched the screen as Ella gave a speech at another event. She stood behind a podium, smiling gently, speaking about strength, healing, and the power of knowing your worth. People clapped, cheered, and stood for her. Caleb didn't move. He just watched. He had lost everything: his job, his image, his power. But losing Ella hit the hardest. He realized far too late that she had been the greatest person in his life. He thought he had control over her. He thought he was the strong one. Now, he knew the truth. She had given him a chance to love her fully. She had given him loyalty, kindness, and trust, and he threw it away. One evening, filled with regret, he sat down and wrote her a letter. A real letter, on paper. He poured his heart into it. He said he was sorry for the things he said, the way he treated her, the years he made her feel small. He told her she didn't deserve any of it. He mailed it, but Ella never read it. When the letter arrived at her office, her assistant handed it to her. "It's from him," the assistant said softly. Ella took it. She looked at the envelope for a long moment. Then, without opening it, she placed it in a drawer and gently closed it. Some doors don't need to be reopened. The next morning, she walked through the glass halls of her company headquarters. Employees smiled and greeted her as she passed. She nodded back, graceful and calm. She wore a simple white blouse and black pants. No need for glitter or gold. Her power wasn't in her clothes, it was in her presence. She stepped into the elevator, alone, and looked at her reflection in the mirror inside. She barely recognized the woman she used to be, the one who used to shrink herself, who used to wait for someone to love her the right way. Now she didn't wait for love. She created love, in her work, in her mission, in herself. As the elevator rose, her voice echoed softly in her mind. "I gave him the chance to love the real me. He chose control instead." She smiled faintly. She had survived, and now she was thriving. One quiet afternoon, Ella returned home from work a little earlier than usual. The sky outside was soft with evening light. Her home felt calm, filled with peace instead of silence. As she walked through the hallway, her housekeeper handed her a small package. "This came for you," she said. Ella took it, curious. There was no name on the return label. She opened it slowly. Inside was a familiar envelope. Her heart skipped. It was the letter she had written to Caleb years ago, the one she had given him on their 5th anniversary, the one he had never read. It was still sealed, unopened. She held it in her hands for a long moment, her fingers gently brushing the edges. So much had changed since then. That letter held a piece of her old self, the woman who loved blindly, who hoped too much, who stayed too long. She walked to a small cabinet in her study. She opened the top drawer. Inside was a neat stack of papers, small items, and one label stuck to the front, "What I Survived." Without saying a word, she placed the letter inside. Then she closed the drawer. She stood there quiet for a moment. Her eyes didn't tear up. She didn't feel pain, just a soft peace, like a chapter finally closing. She smiled, just a little, a faint, gentle smile. Then she turned and walked away, sunlight warming her face through the window. And in her voice, soft and steady, we hear the final words. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find who you truly are. Do you think Ella made the right choice by walking away from Caleb and choosing herself? Or should she have given him one more chance after everything? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to hear what you think. And if you want more powerful stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new chapter.